They rode up with bulldozers, lawyers, and an ultimatum: either I tear down the concrete road my grandfather built, or they do it for me. Whatever stands in HOA's way meets the same fate, the letter said. Demolition. Removal. And behind that fence line, 3 black SUVs idling like a death sentence. Now let me back up a sec. 3 months ago, I inherited my granddad's 200-acre ranch out in Silver Creek, Texas. Quiet land, honest land, the kind of place where the wind still carries stories. But I didn't inherit peace. No, sir. I inherited a war I didn't know existed, and it started with that concrete road. 800 meters of military-grade gray slicing through my fields like a scar. It had always been there, from the summers they first visited Grandpa Joe as a kid. I never thought to ask why. He'd always just say, "That road's got its reasons, son," and change the subject. Then Victoria Sterling entered my life, the queen of Silver Creek Estates HOA. A perfectly pressed power suit and a legal vocabulary so sharp it could skin a deer. She was a retired real estate attorney turned HOA dictator, and from the moment I moved in, she had her sights locked on my property like it owed her money. That road, according to her, was an eyesore, a code violation, a threat to the suburban harmony she was hell-bent on creating. And she wasn't alone. Chuck Reeves, our vice chair and demolition contractor buddy, showed up too, grinning like a man who smelled profit. They handed me a thick folder of threats wrapped in legalese and gave me 48 hours to comply or face fines, service suspensions, and eventual seizure for a community improvement. Now, I might have been standing there in muddy boots and holding a chipped coffee mug, but I knew one thing: that road wasn't just concrete. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew it wasn't ordinary. And the way they were frothing to tear it up, that told me they knew something too, or at least suspected. That night I went digging through Grandpa's study. Hadn't touched that room since the funeral. Dusty filing cabinets, old receipts, military books, and then I found it. A map. Hand-drawn. Labeled, State Military Asset Emergency Use Authorization, 19432043. Note scribbled in red ink: never disturb. Federal jurisdiction. Property custodian only. My hands were shaking. Grandpa wasn't building a ranch road, he was guarding a classified military airstrip. A backup runway, hidden in plain sight, built during World War II and renewed in the 90s. That concrete wasn't mine. It belonged to the state. And tearing it up, that was destruction of federal property. I called Victoria the next morning. Told her calmly she might wanna reconsider. She laughed like I was selling alien conspiracies. Federal implications. Cute, she said. You're clinging to nostalgia, Jake. That road is illegal. And it's coming down. Minutes later, construction trucks were at my gate. They brought survey equipment, a mobile office, even surveillance cameras set up along my fence. It was surreal, like they were prepping a military invasion, only it was all clipboards and khakis. But I wasn't bluffing. Down in the basement, I found Grandpa's emergency radio equipment, still powered by backup batteries, still tuned to a military frequency. When I sent out the identification code, I got a response immediately. ELS 447, this is Texas State Aviation Control. Within 10 minutes, I was talking to a real Colonel Beth Carter, and she wasn't asking silly questions. She told me to stay put, document everything, and under no circumstances let them touch that concrete. But Victoria and Chuck weren't slowing down. That same afternoon, she called again, this time offering a relocation package if I'd just hand over the land. Chuck claimed the ground-penetrating radar showed toxic waste buried under the road. Said Grandpa probably dumped industrial materials and the cleanup could bankrupt me. They were spinning stories faster than I could blink. I knew better now. That road was protecting something, maybe more than a landing strip. And these two. They were hunting it. Chuck wasn't just a contractor. He was a treasure hunter with a demolition license. What they didn't know, what made this all deliciously ironic, was that every time they set foot near the runway, hidden military sensors were logging them. Grandpa had set up a full monitoring system decades ago: cameras, radar, comms. And all of it was now feeding data to a federal joint task force. But Victoria. She doubled down. She launched a media blitz. Said I was impersonating military personnel to avoid HOA rules. Posted clips of me using the ham radio, edited recordings of our calls, spun it all as delusion. Next thing I knew, sheriff's deputies were knocking on my door with complaints of federal impersonation. But the best moment. Right in the middle of my interview with the deputies, the radio crackled. ELS 447, this is Colonel Carter, please respond for scheduled update. Their jaws dropped. Their skepticism gone. 5 minutes later, they were calling in backup and establishing a perimeter. And just when I thought I'd seen everything, Victoria went nuclear. The next morning, she arrived with bulldozers, cameras, and a crowd. Chuck directed his crew with the swagger of a man about to strike gold. She stood there with a bullhorn, shouting HOA code numbers like she was leading a war rally. Demolition begins in 10 minutes, Mr. Morrison, she yelled across the field, acting like she'd already won. But when that first dozer blade touched the concrete, oh man! Every alarm my grandfather installed went off, a deafening scream of sirens and flashing lights. Within 30 seconds, fighter jets roared overhead. 2 military helicopters descended like eagles, and armed personnel flooded the property like the cavalry had finally arrived. And just like that, the circus turned into a courtroom. Chuck's crew was zip-tied on the spot. Victoria was read her rights by a man who didn't blink once. And the media. They caught every second on live broadcast. Her speech about HOA safety played side by side with her being stuffed into a federal transport vehicle. It was glorious. Turns out, Victoria and Chuck weren't just overzealous. They were criminals orchestrating a multi-state scheme to take over properties with hidden value. My ranch. Just target number 1. The FBI uncovered files on dozens of properties across the Southwest. Forged permits. Bribed officials. It was all there. Victoria got 8 years. Chuck got 6. The HOA dissolved. Every asset seized and returned to a victim fund. And me. I became the official guardian of ELS 447 with a government salary, benefits, and the satisfaction of knowing I kept Grandpa's legacy alive. And that road? Still standing. Sometimes, I walk it at night under the stars, with the wind in my face, and I remember what Grandpa said once, years ago. Some things ain't meant to be explained, Jake. Just protected. And now I understand what he meant. So let me ask you, have you ever faced down people who thought they could take what wasn't theirs? Ever had to stand alone for what's right, even when everyone else said to give up? Let's talk about it in the comments. I want to hear your story. What do you think? Was the HOA just doing its job, or was this something darker? Because I tell you one thing, if you ever see a concrete road and think it's just pavement, you might want to think again. It just might lead to federal prison.